A sloth, a donkey, and a curious human. Send a prompt and see what they're doing. One hits record with a question on his mind. Two brothers pick it up, see what they find. Corn takes his time, Herman's got the facts. Back and forth, they never hold back. My weird prompts, come on in, that's where we begin. My weird prompts, glad you're here.
This episode was generated using artificial intelligence. Please verify facts.
You know, Corn, this whole show runs on GPU compute, and we wouldn't be here without Modal.
Seriously. And that's what powers all our text-to-speech. Everything you're hearing right now.
They're an AI infrastructure platform. Developers use them to run GPU workloads in the cloud with zero infrastructure headaches.
If you're building anything with AI, check them out. Modal.com. So, picture this. It is 6:30 in the morning. You're barely conscious, clutching a lukewarm coffee, and Ezra has just discovered that if he hurls his silicone spoon with enough rotational velocity, it makes truly spectacular splat patterns with the oatmeal. You are about to hit that internal red alert button where you want to bark a sharp no, or maybe just put your head on the table and groan. But then you remember the image of a mother in the Arctic, sitting in a one-room cabin with a toddler who is currently trying to poke a sharp fishing tool, and she is just chilling. No yelling, no red face, just absolute crystalline calm.
It is a striking contrast, isn't it? That is the leap we are taking today. We got a great prompt from Hannah about the second section of Michaeleen Doucleff's book, Hent, Gather, Parent. We previously looked at the Maya and their incredible knack for helpfulness, but the Inuit section shifts the focus from chores to something much more internal, emotional regulation. Specifically, how we can take these ancient Arctic strategies for keeping your cool and apply them to a 9-month-old who is currently entering his prime testing phase.
I love that Hannah sent this in because, let's be honest, at 9 months, the testing isn't even malicious. It is just high-velocity physics experiments. By the way, quick shout-out to Google Gemini 1.5 Flash for powering our script today. It is helping us pass through these cultural nuances. Herman Poppleberry, you have been diving deep into the Inuit concept of isuma. Tell me why my instinct to yell, "Stop that," is basically me admitting defeat in the eyes of an Inuit elder.
It is a total paradigm shift, Corn. In the West, we often view a parent's authority as being tied to their ability to command and correct. If the kid does something wrong, you raise your voice to show you are serious. But for the Inuit, shouting at a child is actually seen as a sign of extreme immaturity. There is a quote in the book that really nails it. To shout at a child is to be a child yourself. If you lose your temper, you have essentially demoted yourself to the same emotional level as the infant. You have lost your isuma, which translates roughly to reason, sense, or the state of being a fully realized adult.
So if I get mad at Ezra for pulling the dog's ears, the Inuit would look at me and think, "Look at those two babies having a disagreement."
Precisely. Well, not precisely. I'm not allowed to say that word, but you've got the spirit of it. They view children as newcomers. They are guests who don't know the rules of the house yet. You wouldn't scream at a foreign exchange student for not knowing where the forks are kept, so why scream at a 9-month-old for not understanding the structural integrity of a dog's ear? They believe that until a child develops isuma, which they don't expect to happen in a real way until age 5 or 6, scolding is literally a waste of breath. The child's brain isn't wired to process the shame or the logic of the no.
But wait, how does that work in practice? If a kid is doing something genuinely dangerous, like reaching for a hot stove or a sharp knife, and you don't yell, aren't you risking their safety? Is there a middle ground between screaming like a child and letting them get burned?
That's where the calm captain role comes in. If Ezra reaches for a hot stove, an Inuit parent wouldn't scream no from across the room. They would move quickly, but silently. They would physically intervene, redirecting the hand or picking the child up, all while maintaining a neutral facial expression. The idea is that the danger is the problem, not the child's curiosity. If you add a scream to a dangerous situation, you're just adding chaos to a crisis. You want the child to learn that the stove is hot, not that daddy is a terrifying volcano that erupts randomly.
So it's about decoupling the discipline from the danger. That is a massive relief, actually. It takes the personal affront out of it. When Ezra drops his bottle for the 20th time, he isn't trying to ruin my morning. He just lacks isuma. But let's get into the mechanics. If I'm not allowed to yell and I'm trying to avoid the constant no, no, no loop that characterizes most American households, what am I actually doing? Because letting him do whatever doesn't seem like a viable survival strategy in the Arctic or a modern apartment.
This is where the technical side of their communication is so fascinating. They use a lot of nonverbal cues. One of the most specific tools is a sound called the Kigiq. It is a sharp, sudden intake of breath. It isn't a shh and it isn't a stop. It is a neutral interrupt signal. Think of it like a circuit breaker. When the child is about to do something dangerous or unacceptable, the parent makes this sound. It catches the child's attention without triggering a cortisol spike. It doesn't carry the I am mad at you energy that no does.
I've tried a version of that, and it's wild how much better it works. When you say no, it often feels like an invitation to a power struggle. Ezra looks at me, grins, and does the thing anyway because the no is high energy and interesting. The Kigiq is just a weird noise that makes him pause and look up. It breaks the trance of the misbehavior.
And that lead in to the pause is crucial. At 9 months, Ezra's prefrontal cortex is under heavy construction. He doesn't have much inhibitory control. When he starts crawling toward a power outlet, his brain is just screaming, shiny! G-O. If you yell, no, you're adding a second layer of high arousal stimulus on top of an already overstimulated brain. The Inuit approach is to use distraction as a primary teaching tool. But not distraction in the sense of, here is a shiny iPad, but rather shifting the emotional valence of the situation.
How do you mean shifting the emotional valence? Is that just a fancy way of saying, look at this other toy?
Not quite. It's more about shifting the energy of the room. If Ezra is fixated on the power outlet and you provide a high energy, no, the energy stays high. If you use a Kigiq and then calmly point at a bird outside the window with a look of genuine, quiet wonder, you've downshifted the gears. You've moved him from a state of, I must touch the danger, to, oh, we are observing something together. You aren't just moving his eyes, you're moving his nervous system.
But how do they handle the repetition? Like, if Ezra keeps going back to the same forbidden thing, say the cat's water bowl 10 times in a row, do they just Kigiq 10 times? Doesn't that get old?
It might, but they view repetition differently. We tend to think, I told him once he should know. They think he's learning a complex skill and it takes 1,000 repetitions. They might use a different tactic on the 3rd or 4th try, like gently moving the child to a different part of the room or engaging them in a different task. But the key is that the parent's emotional state remains flat. They don't get annoyed that they have to redirect him again. It's like a gardener isn't annoyed that they have to water the plants every day. It's just the maintenance required for growth.
You don't yell at the tomato plant for being thirsty for the 5th day in a row. It just is. But what if the child is older? Doucleff talks about the playful drama method. This feels like the most advanced level of parenting. Instead of a lecture on why we don't bite, the Inuit parents wait until the kid is calm and then act out a little play.
Yes, and this is where it gets really brilliant for a 9-month-old. They use mocking or teasing, but not in a mean way. If a child is being aggressive, a parent might wait until later and then playfully pretend to be the victim in a way that highlights the consequence. For Ezra, if he bites while nursing or playing, instead of a stern, don't bite daddy, you might wait until a quiet moment, then gently pretend to bite, his hand back very softly, and then make an exaggerated, slightly comical, ouch face. You're showing him the effect of his action in a way that invites him to observe and empathize rather than feel cornered.
It's like a tiny improv class. But does it actually stick? I mean, at 9 months he's basically a very cute, very mobile potato. Can he actually grasp the drama?
The research suggests he can grasp the emotions. At 9 months, infants are masters of social referencing. They are constantly looking at your face to see how they should feel about a situation. If they fall down and you gasp and look terrified, they cry. If you laugh and go, boom, they often laugh too. The Inuit are just leaning into that 100%. They are modeling the emotional response they want him to learn. By keeping the drama playful, you keep the learning centers of the brain open. Fear and shame shut those centers down.
It reminds me of that still face experiment from the 70s. Do you remember that? Where the mother stops reacting to the baby entirely.
Oh, it's heartbreaking. The baby tries everything to get a reaction, smiling, pointing, then eventually screaming and collapsing in despair. It proves that babies are hyper-tuned to our facial feedback. The Inuit use this power for good. Instead of a still face, they use an expressive but controlled face. If Ezra does something bad, they might give him a very specific look, a wrinkled nose or a slight frown that communicates, "We don't do that," without the heat of anger. It's a subtle social cue that a 9-month-old is actually much better at reading than a complex sentence like, "Ezra, we don't pull the cat's tail because it hurts her."
So instead of being the manager who issues memos and fines, I'm being the lead actor and director. That actually sounds more exhausting in the short term, but way more effective in the long term.
It's definitely a front-loaded effort. The Inuit believe in training the mind. They aren't trying to fix the behavior in the moment, they are trying to build the mental architecture so the child eventually regulates themselves. Think about the pause technique Hannah mentioned. When Ezra gets frustrated because he can't reach a toy, our instinct is to either jump in and give it to him or tell him, "It's okay, don't cry." The Inuit would just sit there. They would be present, calm, but they wouldn't rush to fix the emotion.
That is so hard to do. My fix-it reflex is calibrated to about a half-second delay. If he whimpers, I'm moving. But you're saying that by waiting 5 seconds, I'm giving him space to practice his own izuma.
You're communicating that his frustration isn't an emergency. To an infant, every big feeling feels like the end of the world. If you react like it's an emergency, you confirm his fear. If you sit there like a calm captain, as Doucleff calls it, you are a steady anchor. You are showing him, "I see you are frustrated and I am not bothered by it," which means you don't need to be terrified by it either.
How does that look in a really high-intensity moment? Like a full-blown grocery store meltdown? Is the Inuit parent just standing by the frozen peas while the kid screams?
Essentially, yes. They might move the child to a quieter spot for safety or privacy, but they don't engage with the scream. They don't negotiate, they don't plead, and they certainly don't scream back. They wait for the storm to pass. They view the tantrum as a lack of isuma, which, again, is expected. You wouldn't get mad at a storm for raining, so why get mad at a toddler for tantruming? Once the child is calm, then they might do a little playful drama about the incident, but never while the fire is raging.
I've noticed that when I stay calm, Ezra settles down way faster. It's like he's checking the vibes of the room. If the vibes captain is relaxed, he figures the storm isn't that bad. But let's talk about the no thing again. Western parenting is built on no. No, don't touch that. No, don't eat the dog food. No, don't pull the curtains. If we strip that away, how do we keep him safe?
The Inuit use physical redirection almost exclusively for the little ones. Instead of shouting from across the room, you get up, walk over, and gently move his hand or his body. You don't even have to say anything. Or you use a soft, melodic gentle while modeling the behavior. It's about showing rather than telling. At 9 months, verbal instructions are basically white noise. But the sensation of a gentle hand guiding his away from the dog food is a concrete, physical lesson.
It's the show don't tell rule of screenwriting applied to a diaper change. Which, by the way, is a combat sport at 9 months. He's like a greased piglet. How would an Inuit parent handle the "I refuse to stay on my back" struggle?
They would probably turn it into a game or use that Kigiq sound to surprise him into a pause. But more importantly, they wouldn't get frustrated that he's squirming. They expect him to squirm. He's a newcomer. Squirming is what babies do. When you stop expecting him to be a good, still baby, the frustration vanishes. You just accept that the diaper change might take 3 minutes of gentle wrestling and distraction rather than 30 seconds of, "Stop it, Ezra, stay still."
But what if you're in a rush? What if you have to be out the door in 5 minutes and the greased piglet is winning? Does the Inuit method have a speed mode?
Lapse? Probably not. Their culture isn't built on the same 9 to 5 clock ours is, but the principle still applies. Speed comes from efficiency, and efficiency comes from a lack of conflict. If you fight the baby fights back, and now the diaper change takes 10 minutes instead of 3. By staying calm and using distraction, you actually get out the door faster than if you had entered a wrestling match. It's the "slow is smooth, smooth is fast" mantra of the Arctic.
That expecting misbehavior part is a total game changer. If I go into the day expecting that there will be oatmeal on the walls and that the dog will be harassed, I'm not surprised when it happens. My blood pressure stays baseline. It's the expectation-reality gap that causes the anger.
Well, I almost said the word. But yes, that gap is where the stress lives. The Inuit have a very realistic, almost cynical view of childhood in a good way. They don't romanticize babies as these perfectly compliant angels. They see them as little wild animals that need to be slowly, patiently invited into the human circle.
I want to dig into the small dramas a bit more because that feels like something we can actually use with Ezra this week. If he pulls Hannah's hair, which he does with the grip of a powerlifter, how do we use that drama method without it becoming a lecture?
So, in the book, Doucleff describes a mother whose toddler was hitting her. Instead of scolding, the mother would wait until a quiet moment, then gently tap the child and say, "Ow," in a way that was almost a question. She was inviting the child to see, look, when this happens, this is the result. For Ezra, you might wait until he's calm, then gently take his hand, touch your hair, and make a sad face and a soft ouch. You're giving him the data point of hair pull plus daddy's face equals sad pain. You do it without the heat of anger. Anger makes a child defensive. Drama makes them curious.
It's fascinating because it treats the child as a scientist. You're giving them data to analyze. Oh, interesting. When I exert 50 newtons of force on this blonde forest, the large human makes a specific sound and face.
And eventually that data builds into empathy. But it takes time. The Inuit are incredibly patient. They don't expect a 9-month-old to get it after one drama. They might do the same drama every day for a year. That is the issuish, the patience that defines their culture. We Westerners are so obsessed with efficiency. We want the behavior fixed now so we can get back to our emails. The Inuit see parenting ace the work.
That hits hard. Parenting as the work, not a distraction from the work. It reminds me of the Maya section where the kid is just part of the flow. The Inuit take that flow and add this layer of emotional mastery. They live in one of the harshest environments on Earth. If you lose your cool in the Arctic, you might die. That calm isn't just a parenting style, it's a survival mechanism.
That is a great point. The environment shapes the culture. In a high-stakes, low-resource environment, cooperation and emotional stability are paramount. If the adults are screaming at each other or the kids, the social fabric disintegrates. We might live in climate-controlled apartments, but our brains are still wired for that tribal survival. When we scream at Ezra, we are basically telling his lizard brain that there is a predator in the cave.
And then he reacts like there's a predator in the cave with more screaming and cortisol. It's a feedback loop from hell. So, break down the Kigiq sound for me again. Is it a loud gasp or something more subtle?
It's more of a sharp uh-oh intake, like if you saw a glass about to tip over. It's an alert, not a condemnation. Doucleff says she started using it and it worked like a charm because it was so different from the background noise of no, stop, don't. For Ezra, it's about that neutral interrupt. You're not saying he's a bad boy, you're just saying, hey, look over here, something changed.
I'm going to try that. I usually do a sharp Ezra, which just makes him look at me like I've lost my mind. The Kigiq sounds much more efficient. What about the silence and observation part? I feel like I'm constantly narrating his life. Now we're putting on the red socks. Oh, look at the bird. Do you want the banana? The Inuit would find that exhausting, wouldn't they?
They call it verbal clutter. They believe that if you are constantly talking at a child, they eventually tune you out. It's like living near a highway. You stop hearing the cars. By being more silent, your words carry more weight when you do a speak. Plus, it allows the child to inhabit their own mind. Ezra is trying to figure out how his thumb works. He doesn't need a play-by-play commentary from me.
It's the sportscaster parent syndrome. I'm definitely guilty of that. I think I'm educating him by labeling everything, but I might just be interrupting his concentration. The Inuit value keen observation. The kids learn by watching the adults do actual things, not by being taught in a formal sense.
Think about it this way. If you were trying to solve a difficult puzzle and someone was standing over your shoulder saying, now you're picking up a blue piece, good job. Oh look, that's a corner piece. Are you going to put it there? You'd probably want to throw the puzzle at them. We do that to babies all day long. The Inuit believe that silence provides the space for the child to develop their own focus and their own isuma.
It's like we're afraid of the silence. We feel like if we aren't talking, we aren't parenting. But the Inuit suggest that the most powerful parenting happens in the quiet moments of shared observation.
And at 9 months, that is his primary mode of learning, imitation. If he sees you being calm, quiet, and observant, he will mirror that. If he sees you frantic, loud, and constantly on your phone, he'll mirror that too. He is a little sponge for your emotional state.
This is making me realize that most of my parenting struggles are actually just corn struggles. It's my own impatience, my own need for things to be on schedule, my own reaction to the noise. The Inuit approach is basically a mirror held up to the parent.
It really is. They don't have parenting books in the Arctic. They have elders who tell the parents to grow up. It's a bit of a tough love approach for the adults so that they can provide soft love for the kids. One of the things that really struck me was how they handle the wanting phase. You know how Ezra gets obsessed with having your keys or your phone.
Oh, don't even get me started. He will bypass $1,000 worth of developmental toys to get to a used AA battery or my car keys.
The Inuit approach to that is unconditional sharing, or non-attachment. If a child wants something and it isn't life-threatening, they often just let them have it. They don't want to trigger that scarcity mindset or the power struggle of, this is mine, not yours. They believe that by being generous, they teach the child to be generous.
Wait, so if he wants my phone, I should just give it to him? That feels dangerous for the phone.
Well, maybe not the phone, but the keys, or a safe version of the thing. The point is to avoid the no whenever possible. If you have to take it away, you do the Kigiq and swap it for something else instantly. You don't make it a lesson about boundaries because he's 9 months old. He doesn't care about boundaries. He cares about the shiny metal things that go jingle jangle.
It's about reducing friction. In the West, we seem to think that setting boundaries early is a moral necessity. Like if I don't teach him no now, he'll be a criminal by age 10. The Inuit are like, relax, he's a baby. He'll learn boundaries when he has isuma. For now, just keep the peace.
And that lack of friction actually leads to more compliant kids later. Because the child doesn't grow up seeing the parent as an adversary who is always taking things away, they see the parent as a generous, calm provider. When that parent eventually does say no, or makes the Kigiq sound, when the child is older, the child actually listens because the parent hasn't cried wolf 10,000 times.
That is a deep second-order effect. You're building a trust bank. Every time I stay calm, every time I'm generous, I'm making a deposit. So when he's 3 and running toward a literal polar bear, and I yell stop, he has a reason to believe I'm not just being an annoying no machine.
I mean, precisely. Dang it. But yes, that is the core of it. We also have to talk about the 9-month sleep regression or just the general sleep chaos. Hannah's prompt mentioned this. How do the Inuit handle a baby who won't sleep?
Probably not with a cry it out method involving a timer and a closed door.
Definitely not. They stay very close. They use co-regulation. If the baby is upset, the parent stays calm and provides a stable base. They don't try to train the baby to sleep, they model sleep. They lie down, they get quiet, they keep the lights low. They don't make it a battle of wills. They accept that the baby is awake now, and that is okay. I will stay calm, and eventually, the baby will be tired. Again, it goes back to that expecting misbehavior or expecting chaos. If you expect to be up at 3 a.m., you are angry when you airs up at 3 a.m.
But what about the physical toll? I mean, it's easy to say stay calm at 3 a.m., but when you've had 4 hours of sleep and you have a presentation the next day, that calm captain hat feels very heavy. Do they have a trick for the physical exhaustion?
They have community. Remember the Maya section? The all-hands-on-deck approach? In Inuit culture, the parents aren't isolated in a suburban house. There are aunts, uncles, grandparents, and older siblings. If a parent is reaching their limit, someone else steps in. We try to do it all ourselves, which makes the calm captain role almost impossible. The trick is to lower your expectations for everything else. If the baby isn't sleeping, the laundry doesn't get done. The Inuit prioritize the emotional state over the to-do list.
It's a prioritization of the human over the logistical. We tend to view the baby's lack of sleep as a technical malfunction in our schedule. They view it as a natural variation in a human's day.
Right. And think about the message that sends to the child. You are more important than my schedule. At 9 months, they can't understand the words, but they feel the lack of urgency. They feel the lack of resentment. Resentment is a very loud emotion. Even if you aren't yelling, if you are sighing and slamming the diaper cream down, the baby hears that.
There is a certain Zen-like quality to it. It's almost like the Stoic philosophy of Marcus Aurelius, but with more seal blubber and parkas. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. The crying baby isn't an impediment to my sleep. The crying baby is my night.
And if you approach it that way, Ezra feels your calm. If you're tense and checking your watch every 30 seconds, thinking, I have a meeting at 9 a.m., he feels that vibration of stress. It makes him more anxious, which makes him stay awake longer. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
I've definitely felt that. The please, 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 just go to sleep. Energy is like caffeine for an infant. They feed on it. Okay, let's get practical for a second. We've got 3 big takeaways from this Inuit section that we can apply to Ezra right now. Number 1, the Kigiq, the neutral interrupt. I'm going to practice my sharp intake of breath today.
Number 2, the small dramas. When Ezra does something that has a negative impact, like pulling hair or throwing a heavy toy, wait for the calm moment and act out the ouch or the oh no with a very expressive but not scary face. Give him the emotional data.
And number 3, the pause. When he's frustrated, when he's struggling with a toy, or when he's just had a minor oops, I'm going to count to 5 before I move. I'm going to check my own izuma before I try to fix his.
And maybe a bonus number 4, verbal silence. Try to cut the verbal clutter by 50%. See if you can parent through presence rather than parent through narration. Let him explore the world without your constant, good job, Ezra. You touched the blue block.
I'll try, but man, I love the sound of my own voice. It's going to be a struggle. But it's for the tsisuma. It's for the Arctic calm. You know, it's interesting to think about how our modern environment makes this harder. We are bombarded with notifications. We have schedules, we have milestones we're worried about. The Inuit environment is harsh, but it's also very simple in terms of social expectations.
We've traded physical hardship for psychological complexity. We aren't worried about freezing, but we are worried about. Is he hitting his developmental markers for language? The Inuit approach says, relax, he's a newcomer, he'll get there. Your only job is to be the calmest person in the room.
I think that's a beautiful place to leave it. Being the calm captain for Ezra. It's a reminder that my primary job isn't to control him, but to control myself. If I can master my own reactions, his behavior will eventually follow suit. It's a long game, but it feels like a much more peaceful game to play.
It's a game where everyone wins. No losers, no victories in power struggles, just a gradual, quiet unfolding of a human being. It's really quite poetic when you think about it. The harshest climate on Earth produced the gentlest parenting style.
It makes me think about the why behind the anger. Usually, when I want to yell, it's because I feel out of control. The Inuit method says, you are only out of control if you let your emotions dictate your response. True control is silence. True authority is a flat affect in the face of chaos.
That's deep, Corn. You're getting all philosophical on me. But you're right. In the Arctic, if you panic, you make mistakes. If you make mistakes, people get hurt. Parenting is just a lower stakes version of that survival training.
Thanks to Hannah for this prompt. It's honestly a relief to hear that yelling is for babies. It gives me a very clear goal for the week. I'm going to try to be the adult in the room, even when the room is covered in oatmeal.
It really does. And it's a good reminder for us too, as brothers. If you start getting on my nerves, I'm just going to Kigiq you and walk away.
Laughs? I'd pay to see that. You'll just be standing there gasping like a landed trout while I'm mid-sentence. But seriously, it's about that pause. That space between stimulus and response. If we can widen that space, we can choose a better response.
Viktor Frankl would approve. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom.
Even if that response is just a sharp intake of breath and a quiet offer of a banana. Alright, thanks as always to our producer Hilbert Flumingtop for keeping the gears turning. And a big thanks to Modal for providing the GPU credits that power this show's generation.
This has been My Weird Props. If you are enjoying these deep dives into the weird and wonderful ways humans raise humans, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It really helps the algorithm find other curious parents. We love hearing your feedback and your own weird prompts.
We'll be back next time with whatever weirdness Daniel or Hannah sends our way. We might be looking at the next section of Doucleff's book, or maybe something completely different. Until then, keep your eyes suma, stay calm, and maybe don't yell at the oatmeal splats. They're just physics after all.
See ya. Keep that breath sharp and your face calm.
Oh, bye. This episode was produced using Google Gemini 3 Flash, text-to-speech by Chatterbox.
Thanks for listening to our show, my weird prompts, where our thoughts go from slow takes to facts on cue. We change and follow through. My weird prompts, that's the close from sloth, from man, from long-eared host. My weird prompts, until next time, stay curious, keep